You know, some of the videos I've made have been very, not edgy. I think they were just outright cruel.
Now, obviously, times have changed, and he has changed. He's gotten older. He's in his 30s now. In your 30s, it's not exactly entertaining to just be spamming slurs for shock humor. I don't find that entertaining, and he doesn't either. So it's totally fine to want to distance yourself from making content like that.
Where he's like, I don't think it was that bad. I think it's totally fine to say the N-word. That's not what he said.
That's not what he said.
But like, in a sense, it is what he was saying.
You know, I said a lot of things that I look back at and I cringe now, and I'm like, that is an awful thing to say.
This I completely understand. That is totally normal to look back on that and cringe, right? In your 30s and really any age over 16, you're not exactly going to be getting a hearty ho 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 belly laugh just hearing a bunch of slurs being spammed.
The question I have for Charlie is literally this. If it wasn't that big of a deal, why the didn't you say the N-word and F-word all the time and make arguments as to why you should be able to say it back then? Why?
But when you come through on the other end, you know who you are, and your fans know who you are. And now I've never been more honest. I've never been more authentic. It was so bizarre. This girl called in and was telling us about this horrible date she had with Fit, and then they make a video saying how like she's a liar, and I didn't watch it. I watched some of it, but it was upsetting, so I didn't watch it.
Oh my God. You said we're disingenuous, we're cutting you out, but you just admitted you don't even know the context of what we said.
You don't even.
And you called us a liar.
I've never been more honest. I've never been more authentic. If you want to do the war thing, that's my favorite thing in the world.
They can sometimes be like agreeable, but I think that's why it's like kind of insidious.
I just want to thank everyone who's given me the space and the compassion to grow as a person.
Personal growth.
He made that personal growth. He made that personal change in his...
You ask any of our fighters and it's like, yeah, Anissa was the one who like solves problems. She is more communicative than me, and she's better at communicating than I am. I suck at this shit.
Do you talk to yourself? Do you have an internal monologue? According to an article on WebMD, 96% of adults have an internal monologue and 25% say they talk to themselves. There is a certain stigma attached to self-talk, that it comes off as strange, uncomfortable, and awkward. However, the practice of talking to yourself is associated with high cognitive function and focus, according to some studies. According to Harvard Business Review, one study shows that people who explain ideas to themselves learn almost 3 times more than those who don't. It's not hard to see why communication, even with oneself, is so important. Our society is, at the simplest level, built upon communicating and executing ideas. If we're capable of summarizing something we just read, we're far more likely to remember and be able to communicate the idea to others. It's such a common thing in speech that it's something I'm currently doing, communicating an idea. In this day and age, how often do we get the opportunity to exercise real conversation? What can we do to practice our communication skills? I believe criticism is more necessary than ever. I believe ridicule and hate can be appropriate when communicated properly. Hate is not hate speech. You can effectively convey why you disagree with someone or why you think what they're doing is wrong without it being harassment. You can insult them, argue against them, speculate, and more. The problem isn't coming across as offensive. The problem is refusing to honestly engage with anything one may deem offensive. In the recent iDubbbz apology, he says this:
Anyone who thinks that I should be shouting the N-word from the rooftops, I don't want to be your cup of tea.
Hasan sort of echoes this sentiment.
Either people are like, oh, thank God he did this beloved content creator who was like very edgy at the time, who I consumed, who I had similar opinions to, and I grew. I'm glad that he grew as well, and he's, you know, recognizing it. That's the majority. That's the 60%. Then the 40% is like, why isn't he still saying slurs?
What iDubbbz and many of the people standing up for him fail to address is that there are much better, much more common criticisms levied against iDubbbz than just, oh, he doesn't use the N-word anymore. Some started to turn on him when his wife started making adult content, but for a lot of people, the turning point was how he handled the documentary Getting Away With It with Sam Hyde. As somebody who's been too familiar with this situation for the last year or so, I don't think I've seen a single person who genuinely cares that iDubbbz doesn't say the N-word anymore. But it's a lot easier to say, I'm sorry for using bad words, than it is to say, I'm sorry for being a manipulative puppet master who refunded money for charity because I can't get along with the guy that I was trying to punk. I'm sorry I was outright trying to impose a very specific interpretation and impression of myself onto my audience. I'm sorry for implying that the only people who could enjoy my content are basement internet-dwelling idiots like I was because, well, there's no way that anybody else could get any kind of value out of this entertainment otherwise. But no, the only possible thing detractors could be upset with is the lack of the N-word. It's utterly patronizing.
I have made some cruel, hurtful content, and I need to acknowledge that, and I'm really sorry that it's taken me this long to acknowledge it. The content I'm talking about specifically are content cop videos and videos where I was just generally criticizing people for very lackluster reasons.
Lackluster reasons. Let's go through the individuals who have been content copped and see if they deserved the criticism or not. Jinx Reload built his channel off of stealing other people's content under the guise of reaction, deserving of criticism. The Fine Bros tried to copyright the React format as a whole, deserving of criticism. Keemstar, surprisingly, looking back at the Content Cop series, this is one of the weakest ones regarding actual criticism, although that's not to say Keemstar hasn't done anything worthy of calling out. Leafy bullied children for content, deserving of criticism. How to Prank It Up, a cringy prank channel. While not as egregious as the others, the channel was still bad, but was it worth a content cop? Maybe not. Although that video does have some of my favorite skits on the iDubbbz channel.
What the heck? What happened? Where the heck did this stuff come from? Dang it.
Tana said if iDubbbz broke both his legs and lost all of his subscribers, she would be genuinely happy. Perhaps going to her fan meetup or whatever to cause a ruckus was a little bit much, but the only time iDubbbz did something like this for a content cop was when it was Anissa's idea.
Yeah. I was the one that
suggested, like, we can go to the place. It's just in San Francisco. I'm like, it is just in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Rice Gum asked the girl who was, well, forced upon if it felt good. Most definitely deserving of criticism. These are the kinds of people that iDubbbz wants to apologize to make sure he didn't hurt their feelings too bad. This is an excerpt from the article Millennials Are Struggling with Face-to-Face Communication. Here's why. Metrics is something everyone in the digital world obsesses over. At no other point in history have we had access to such a broad audience right at our fingertips, which is a great thing for brands to build on. Yet this platform sometimes makes us overlook the quality of relationships versus the quantity of how many we have. This is from another article. Twitch concerns over streamers' mental health. Twitch's design is leading aspiring professional streamers to spend an unhealthy amount of time broadcasting on the site. It's about being online for as long and as often as you can, so the maximum number of people can tune in. Even for content creators who aren't quite this online, there's a temptation to obsess over how the public and your audience perceives you. This is often referred to as optics. An entry in Urban Dictionary defines it as the viewing lens of public perception. Discourse around iDubbbz has been rather popular lately. Things like his appearance on Anthony Padilla's channel and the Froggy Fresh Fallout have made him a divisive topic. The newest apology video has some of the biggest creators giving their opinion on the issue, most notably Moist Critical. Critical was basically saying, while the slurs in Ian's old content were unfortunate and cringy, many of the criticisms from the old content cops were more than justified. Critical also mentions he doesn't think iDubbbz has had nearly as damaging or as negative of an impact as Ian seems to think.
You know, I don't think like you ruined lives because you made Content Cop. I don't think you made an entire generation of racists and bigots because you use slurs for shock humor. I think that's a very bastardized perspective of how people digest content online. Now, I have no doubt that his audience did cultivate some weirdo losers that probably were real racists somewhere in there that didn't really care about his message and just liked that he was saying the N-word.
It's a very reasonable and level-headed take, but of course, this wasn't close to good enough for people like Hasan and Ethan Klein.
Because it's the easy take, and Charlie did the same thing. It's the enlightened centrism. There's so many people that are mad at iDubbbz for apologizing, for saying the N, and telling people it's okay to say the N-word.
People aren't getting upset because iDubbbz apologized for using slurs. It's the fact iDubbbz now thinks criticism is cruelty, but it's a lot easier to defend your friend if you just paint all their haters as racist or bigoted. It's far more enticing to say, Charlie advocates for the N-word, than it is to say, Charlie had a relatively nuanced take that I disagree with. Making fun of somebody's chin may hurt their feelings, but implying one of the biggest content creators is a racist for the sake of content is just malevolent. talent.
But this is the easy brownie points, you know, to get like, oh, this guy's lame. I've seen all the commentary channels. They're all doing their tour of like, iDubbbz is a sellout. It's lame. And Charlie did the light version of that where he's like, I don't think it was that bad. I think it's totally fine to say the N-word. That's not what he said.
It's not what he said.
But like, in a sense, it is what he was saying.
But
because he's like...
That's the problem, though, when you're not clear, though, about that. When you're like, well, those videos weren't that bad. Okay, so let me interpret. What do you mean by that? You mean that what he did wasn't wrong?
Right.
You mean that I can say it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can't leave that room when on topics like this.
This is one of the least charitable interpretations possible. With this logic, it'd be easy to paint Ethan Klein as a misogynist or any other kind of bigot.
If you are able to look at women who are not...
I know he's apologized for laughing at QTC crying, but he is constantly saying stuff that he winds up apologizing for. So if we apply Ila's logic of things being left open to interpretation, I can say whatever I want as long as I apologize for it, and then I can continue to say whatever I want. That may not be what Ethan Klein said in his apology, but actions speak louder than words. On to Hasan's reaction.
Point is, he wasn't happy with the content he made or the person he was, and now he's trying to apologize for the videos he made. And I, once again, have to completely disagree with the way he looks at it. I feel like his perspective on it is very warped by the way the internet has evolved over the years. The way he talks about this content makes it sound like he used to fucking murder puppies for these videos, which it was never that extreme. I very much would consider...
Bro, come on, Charlie. He was screaming the N-word at people, dude. What the... Okay, I take it back. Charlie's not the normie barometer on this, okay? It's not. It's not like he was killing puppies, yes. It's not like he was doing race crimes individually, but like it's straight up. It is straight up probably like the most openly recognized unacceptable action. You know what I mean?
First off, iDubbbz was not just screaming the N-word at people. My lord. The series was called Content Cop, not Slur Slinger. Second of all, I can easily think of some worse, openly recognized, unacceptable actions. I guess if you're a millionaire living in LA, then yeah, hearing something you don't want to hear is probably the absolute worst thing you can imagine. This is from the article Beyond the Echo Chamber. When field biologists observe animal populations, they see that social learning, which takes place primarily through the imitation of successful individuals, can improve success in foraging decisions, mate choice, and habitat selection. In both animals and humans, however, this effect occurs only as long as the individuals in the group have diverse strategies. Indeed, one key to good decision-making is learning from the successes and failures of others, frequently and in a range of situations. In order to avoid echo chamber mentality, not only should you engage with foreign ideas, but you should be able to understand a charitable representation of the new idea. Hasan and Ethan have recently started drama with Abba and Preach. On Leftovers, Abba and Preach get brought up because Timpool was watching them dunk on Hasan. Once they're brought up, Ethan in particular starts to get a bit unhinged.
Here's the thing about Abba and Preach that they don't know about me. They don't bother me enough yet. But I'll tell you this, I'm insane. And if you want to do the war thing, that's my favorite thing in the world. But I'm close. God. They're pathetic, they're liars, they're dishonest, and they're phonies.
Although Abba and Preach have made content on both Hasan and Ethan in the past, this kind of declaration of war came out of nowhere. What seems to stick out the most in Ethan's mind regarding Abba and Preach is some drama involving a girl who hung out with Fresh and Fit, and Abba and Preach covered that.
The first time they talked about me was defending Fresh and Fit.
Right.
It was so bizarre. This girl called in and was telling us about this horrible date she had with Fit, and then they make a video saying how like she's a liar and. I didn't watch it. I watched some of it, but it was upsetting, so I didn't watch it.
They're centrists.
I'm not going to get into the specifics of the drama around this girl calling in because it's rather boring and stupid. But Abba and Preach were definitely in the right in this situation. Ethan took this girl's dishonest story to characterize someone else as predatory, and when confronted with proof that he grossly misrepresented the situation, he doesn't even watch the whole video. This is especially rich because Ethan claims that Abba and Preach clipped them out of context.
They're one of these people, they operate in bad faith and they'll just cut it and make a million videos of it. They take shit out of context to try to like quote unquote dunk.
But he doesn't even watch their videos, so he doesn't know what the context is.
Yeah, I didn't watch it to be honest.
like-
I watched some of it, but it was upsetting, so I didn't watch
They're
it.
centrists, you know?
Yeah, and we know what
Kinda.
that means.
Yeah, we know what that means. Those dirty centrists and their chicanery, stealing our jobs, doing the crimes, running amok. Yeah, centrists. We know what that means, all right. The way Ethan and Hasan talk, it's like there's no room for disagreement or nuance whatsoever. I guess this is what personal growth looks like.
I used to run into this problem with Keemstar where no matter what I said and did, he would, in bad faith, just come up over me and say whatever. And I found out the best way to combat that in my case was to talk more. And I love that game, dude.
Well, that's not very mature. This childish behavior contradicts what Ethan said about the reckoning. The reckoning is a term coined by Ethan Klein. It's basically acknowledging you have a problematic audience and then doing something to change that. So it makes sense Ethan would talk about it in reference to the current iDubbbz situation.
Horrible
You've also
shit.
had the reckoning
That's
that Ian is going through right now.
I've had the reckoning.
Will come.
It's painful. And frankly, there's nothing really to gain from it other than personal growth. The reckoning we went through was one of the worst times of my life, psychologically.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was so painful. And it was like I was in like just a mental,
Lowest of the low.
it was just a battleground in my mind. Yeah, just low times. But when you come through on the other end, you know who you are, and your fans know who you are. And now I've never been more honest. I've never been more authentic.
They try to talk about this as if it's some sort of enlightening experience, but Ethan is still the epitome of a man-child. He blindly calls Abba and Preach disingenuous phonies. He tries to demasculate them by calling them Peaches and Cream, terrible name.
Just as a nickname.
Peaches and cream, because they're soft, bro. They're like a
No,
nice
I don't really
sweet
like
bowl
that
of
much.
oatmeal.
Thank you, Hasan.
I don't really like it that much.
Not good.
Okay, I think it demasculates them, and that's why I like it.
The lesson he learned from Keemstar was take the low road, and then he's going to sit here and preach about personal growth. He says the reckoning has allowed him to be more authentic, but right after, he stops himself from making a fat joke about Boogie 2988.
Talk about a dude who's not authentic at all. I don't think he knows what that word even means.
I mean, he's practically the king of the fence.
He's the
He
king of
rules
fence. He
the
is
fence sitting.
I'm not
king
gonna
of
make
the
any,
fence.
I'm not going to make any joke about that. I promise. About him sitting on the fence.
Gotcha.
It's not
I
gonna
wasn't
happen.
even thinking about that.
It's not going to happen.
Good for you.
You know, nothing about all the king's horses and all the king's men. And I don't have to do what like Charlie and Boogie's doing, where I don't have to like say it all the way.
You have to cater to some
Yeah.
people, so you got to worry about how you phrase yourself.
100%, exactly.
It seems like he's still careful not to upset his audience too much, and as I said earlier, he still apologizes for the things he says all the time. I really don't see whatever kind of clarity or maturity can come from this sort of quote-unquote reckoning. If anything, all Ethan Klein did was turn his community into more of an echo chamber. He's willing to, figuratively, go to war with Abba and Preach, but his skin is so thin he's not even willing to watch or understand their arguments against him. Ethan Klein is one of the biggest online commentators in the world. How embarrassing is it that he's not even willing to watch the people he criticizes, the people that he goes to war with? It's weird because thinking of Ethan back in 2016, he wasn't nearly this irrational, hostile, or combative. He was actually willing to understand an idea before arguing against it. This isn't growth, it's just stubborn and childish. Even the way he frames the iDubbbz situation comes from a place of, you're either with us or against us.
And I think that anyone who's not fully supportive of him is out of their mind. It's just a full self-report.
Ethan and Hasan have done a great job of making the iDubbbz apology an even more divisive topic. Now, instead of it merely being a matter of opinion, your stance on the iDubbbz situation is an indicator of whether or not you're a decent human being. If you don't agree the content cops were a danger to society, then you're an immature bigot incapable of growth or empathy. It's a full-on self-report, but the real self-report is admitting you suck at communication as one of the biggest YouTubers in an attempt to defend yourself.
You ask any of our fighters and it's like, yeah, Anissa was the one who like solves problems. She is more communicative than me, and she's better at communicating than I am. suck at this shit.
There are other problems in this Froggy Fresh drama video, but as a YouTuber and the owner of Creator Clash, this is beyond embarrassing. Communication skills are important for just about any occupation, but for YouTube, communication is the job. It took me a bit to fully digest the fact he admits he sucks at communication. I've been covering iDubbbz for a while, and it no longer feels like I'm punching up. Some universal advice. Practice your speech. Learn how to be comfortable in an argument. If you're watching or listening to somebody's opinion, pause it and try to debate it. Get more accustomed to talking to people on the phone instead of texting them. iDubbbz could have turned the Froggy Fresh drama video into a real production. He could have had an actual timeline and done some Metal Gear Solid style editing. He could have tried to use entertainment as a vehicle for criticism. Instead of getting likable content, we now get, "This is why you have to agree with me, otherwise you're a horrible person." And then he has the gall to say the content cops were the moral grandstanding.
I was morally grandstanding and acting as if I am any better than any of these people that I was making Content Cop videos on, and I'm not.
If 2016 is known for its edginess, this era will be remembered for our inability to communicate. Alright, that's gonna have to do it for this one. Shout out to the best subscriber squad in all of YouTube. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
I made it a point from the very first time I was elected not to go to closed session so I could tell you the truth. So nobody could hold me back. Why didn't you interview my investigator register person?
Mr. Rocco, if you can stay on to the item at
I
hand
am
about the
on
board
I am
bylaws.
on the item.